encourage all to share their opinions. We do not support any comments that may slander, discriminate, or otherwise offend anyone, and we insist that you refrain from any such statements.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear No Favor. Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to sugarcityfmsakers.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. Enjoy Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear no favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Good evening and welcome to Fear No Favor. Now, this evening, I would really want to look at mental health. Some persons, when they hear about this particular topic, sometimes they don't wish to listen. But I'm going to try my best and put it out there in a way that people could really understand. Because we have some issues around in our federation where persons are trying to deal from a natural perspective and apparently taking patients, and I don't know whether they refer to them as patients or clients. And I'm going to come to that particular issue. Before I came here, I looked at the television, CNN channel, and I saw them maybe closing in on this gentleman who used to be in the military, U.S. Reserve, the very sharp shooter. He was a firearm instructor. And I think sometime down in Maine yesterday, he killed 18 persons, a lot of little children, because they were at a bowling park, and injured dozens of others. So I think yesterday they didn't catch up with him. Today it seems as if they're zeroing in on him at his home. Maybe he had to go back home for something. And what happened is that it has been indicated that several months ago he would have gone to the psychiatric ward for treatment for 2 weeks. Now, I'm talking on this topic because we had Mental Health Month and I didn't get a chance to make an input. I got some calls from some close friends who know precisely what I am now studying. Some persons know me to be in the field of chemistry. Some know me to be in the field of law. Some know me to be in the field of forensic psychology. But not many knew that I was completing a doctorate in clinical psychology. That is above the shoulder. And I felt a bit guilty that I have not contributed to the effort of respecting persons with mental health issues. Yes, I'm just a stone throw away from achieving that particular goal. And we have, just like that gentleman over in the US, we have situations here where people are suffering from mental disorders, abnormal behavior sometimes, And some persons are in denial. Some persons are in need of help and not subjecting themselves to be helped. Some families would have basically discarded their family member who is seemingly showing signs of mental issues. And some persons feel as if when you're trying to provide care for a person who is mentally ill, that the doctors and the psychiatrists and the psychologists, they're just cooking up something. No, you had years of research, clinical work done in order to compile a manual. You call it, I have it here, DSM-5, because it is the fifth edition, the latest edition. And this was part of my studies, where it continued to be like the Bible in mental health. And DSM basically means the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It is not very easy to get to the root of a mental problem. You observe strange or abnormal behavior amongst people, family, friends, and since you're not the expert, you'll have to approach persons who are specialized in that area so they can help you with a diagnostic run. There are many, many mental health issues. I will just quickly give you an indication of some of them, and you would understand that if somebody is behaving in an abnormal way, you have to allow the experts to do what they have to do to get to the base of the problem. Yes, of course, we have stress, which is an external factor. And then the stress might move inwards, anxiety. The anxiety might roll over to depression, and that sort of sequencing. But you have to understand those are just a few. And if somebody is seemingly troubled by some mental issues, you have to give the experts a fair chance. Some of us are being denial. Some of us feel like you don't want your relative, family member, friend to be categorized as such. But there are many, many mental ailments. One such is the neurodevelopmental disorder. You have schizophrenia, spectrum, and other psychotic disorders. You have bipolar and related disorders. You have depressive disorders. You have anxiety disorders. You have obsessive, compulsive, and related disorders. You have trauma and stressor-related disorders. You have dissociative disorders. You have somatic symptom and related disorders. There is also feeding and eating disorders. You have elimination disorders. There is also sleep-wake disorders. You have sexual dysfunction. You have gender dysphoria. You have disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders. You have substance-related and addictive disorders. You have neurocognitive disorders. You have personality disorders. You have paraphilic disorders. And you have other mental disorders. Those are a few. Some of us might have never heard about many of them. Some of you might have been surprised to learn that Eating disorders is a mental issue. An eating disorder is a mental issue. Now, many years of clinical work, research, went into the compilation of the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. They give you quite a range of mental illnesses. They give you what you look for before you could diagnose. After you diagnose, they might suggest a possible treatment. They may give you a prognosis of chances of you recovering fully or what you would have to be on going forward. And we have to trust the clinical research, a summary of which, well, I can't say summary because they're rather elaborate, a compilation of which is placed in the DSM-5. We have to be very careful. We have on our streets persons who are obviously experiencing challenges from a mental perspective. Maybe around here, things like stress, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorders. Those are a few things that would interfere with one's mental state. And if you do not seek timely help from the appropriate expert, you can go from bad to worse. And you can deteriorate quickly if you are not cared for in the proper way and over the extended period of time that is necessary to bring about improvement, stabilizing you, establishing an equilibrium, knowing what sort of treatment would be best for you. And of course, a lot of it is always coupled with the talk therapy, psychotherapy. You got pharmacological intervention where you use medication, and you have psychotherapy where it's basically talk therapy. But once you are improving, sometimes the psychiatrist would refer you to a psychologist. That is where you get the talk therapy. Sometimes you get it on an individual basis. Sometimes you get it as group therapy, family therapy. But you must be consistent. Now, we have a situation where there are some persons around in our federation who, after the psychiatrist would have seen that individual and suggest a pharmacological program to help the individual to go through improvement. There are some people around here who are taking or suggesting to family members to take their relative off of the medication. And I think that is disastrous, and it could spell disaster for us in many ways. Because if those persons deteriorate to the extent that they become violent either to themselves or to other members of society, then you would have to put some blame on those persons who try to encourage their providing a service and maybe other medication or supplement to that individual. My question is though, where are these people registered so that they get the authority to take people off their psychotic medication and put them on whatever supplement they decided? Because these persons are also selling the supplements that they are prescribing to the sick person. And it depends on the family members, how much they believe in these people. And what we do, what we witness maybe, is a time bomb. Just ticking, ticking. Because some people prefer, if their family member or friend do not have to be subjected to the medication, that should be the best thing for them, at least for that duration of time. And they prefer to hear these persons, and I don't know if it's the medical board, I don't know who gave those persons licenses to practice and what they're supposed to be practicing. But I don't believe that they are medical doctors. They are not specialized in the area of psychiatry, and it is rather unfair to that individual or those individuals who they suggest to the caretaker to take them off the medication and have them use supplements alone. I think that it is time that our practitioners around here conform to the ethics. And one part of ethics is that you should not operate outside your boundary. And that is a very serious ethical principle. You should not operate outside of that boundary. You cannot be a dentist and somebody comes to you for a surgery regarding the appendicitis. You can't do that. You're not specialized in that area. And it is unethical for persons to be involving themselves in areas where they are not qualified to. Being a doctor doesn't say that you have the liberty to do whatever you want to do with a human being because you would have passed at some university and you have now become a doctor. I understand the medical board would deal with people who would cross over their boundaries. But who is responsible for these people who are doing things from a natural perspective? Those who believe that the body would eventually heal itself. But if the body would eventually heal itself, nobody would die. They would overcome cancer and everything else. The body cannot eventually heal itself without the appropriate help, assistance, precursors, catalysts. The body just cannot help itself just like that. So when you would indicate to somebody, just provide your family member or your friend with supplements, and eventually the mental issue would go away. When is this eventuality? Does the road to this eventuality would have several relapses? Are you aware that the relapse just worsen the conditions? How long, if you are so absolutely certain that you're providing the correct guidance and information and prescribing the correct supplements, you should also be able to give them a time frame in which total recovery would be had. But you're not doing that. It's all about economics. Take that, take them off for that, take these supplements. Supplements that might be very expensive. Services that might be very expensive. And that is rather unfortunate because it is creating a very disastrous situation for us here in St. Kitts Nevis. So the key question, those who are listening, I would like to know who gave those persons licenses to practice, precisely what are they supposed to be practicing, Do they have to be a part of a medical board? Do you have to be tested? Do you have to be placed under supervision? Are you accountable to the medical board? When you take a person who is mentally sick off of the prescribed medication of the psychiatrist and things start to go downhill, you're directly responsible. Do you write a report to say I've been treating this person with vitamin B, vitamin, whatever supplements? Do you have a history of treatment and what you gave to that person? So in the event the person start to go down that slippery slope, you can share the information with the qualified expert who is a psychiatrist. Do you share your information? I mean, you have some doctors, you approach them and they want to pretend that they know it all. So they always offer some suggestion. And of course, if you're a common person and a doctor is telling you to do X, Y, Z, most of the time you want to conform because you feel like it is coming from a qualified individual. The person might be qualified, but not in that area. Not in that area. When an individual would tell me that a doctor prescribed that a mentally sick person should sleep for several days without waking, I really don't know what that's supposed to mean. Are you inducing a coma to that individual? What are you doing? Why would you suggest that a person should sleep for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days and not to get up out of that sleep? But the body is doing its processes, waste would be generated. So what would happen to the waste? If the person is not supposed to get up, sometimes it's just common sense, Sometimes it's common sense. Sometimes you don't even need to complete primary school for you to understand that what people said to you sometimes doesn't make any sense. You sleep for several days. You have not been comatose, you have not been induced into a coma by a medical doctor. So they do not have things plugged up to you, apparatus and everything, to take control of you while you're comatose. Now, if you're supposed to be living normally, and you're sleeping for 3, 4, 5 days, 7, 8, 9 days, without any stimulus disrupting that sleep, meaning without getting up. Normally, what do? Some of us can't even sleep through the night. We need to go bathroom. We are told that on a daily basis, we should try to go off. So, when the first day passes, the second day passes, the third day passes, and those lot of days pass by, what is going on inside of that individual with that bodily waste that is not being pushed out? You're poisoning the system. The reason why things are waste, because the body not supposed to be engaging them anymore. So what do? You have poisonous stuff accumulating in the body. The body is supposed to get rid of them. But yet some smart doctor would tell you let the person sleep for a number of days without getting up. But I started here my program, but I think that is something that needs to be looked into. I don't know what kind of advice is that. It is so sickening. Common sense approach that does make sense. If you are not specialized in a particular area, keep out. Do your referral. And even if you are specialized in a particular area and the case before you is a little overwhelming, suggest somebody who is more experienced. Discuss the matter with your seniors. Just like lawyers, you go to your senior counsel and you have a discussion. Where you go to your senior medical mate and you have a discussion. Don't pretend that you have the answer for every situation that an individual or individuals who approach you, you would have. You don't have all the answers. And I would really like to do some research on that with respect to just letting the person sleep for 4, 5, 6, 7 days and see how that could assist in resolving a mental issue. Whether it is not a serious one, a very serious one, how would that bring about some resolve? You have to know the person's history. You have to know the same guy on the television who killed 18 persons and injured dozens. He was hearing voices because when he checked into the psychiatric ward, his record, his history would show that he was hearing voices telling him to kill, shoot down that, shoot down that, shoot down a whole set of men. When a person reaches that stage where they are hearing things, they need a little bit more attention than a doctor who would tell them, let them sleep for these number of days. And another person telling them, stop taking medication and subject yourself to supplements. People don't behave like that. Everybody is economics. They want money. You have to pay them for the service, the consultation, and you have to pick up the supplements from them. And I think that the government would have to start to look into those situations. Unless think it would be one big time bomb. Can't take people off the medication and you don't have the qualification or the expertise to do that. And you have persons who prescribing. I don't want to say suggesting because coming from people who should know better. If you suggest that somebody take something and you're a doctor, that could be equated to prescribing. You're not qualified to prescribe medication in that particular. So why are you doing it? Why would you want to prescribe medication when you're far, far away from that category of expertise? We have to stop taking advantage of people. Usually people are desperate for attention, for the sick family or friend, and some of us take advantage of that. Some of us know fully well that what they are suggesting or prescribing would have zero effect and can cause that person's situation to be protracted for an extremely long time. And it cannot be right. Government cannot sit back and have persons doing that in our federation. We are a small country, small population. We can't afford to have too many mentally ill persons per capita walking around not being cared for properly. Cannot. And somebody would need to look into that urgently, with the urgency of now. It should not be allowed to fester anymore. You have the DSM-5, the most recent edition, offering you guidelines. And you going to sidestep and tell your client, I got to say client because I can't be any patient. Tell your client to come off. Your client, but the psychiatrist, patient. He's a patient to the psychiatrist, but he's a client to you. It's economics for you, but it's medical care. Who giving these people license to practice? What are they practicing? Are they dealing with clients or patients? Who are they accountable to? Apart from getting a business license and paying whatever for your license a year time and whatever money you make, paying your taxes, caring for somebody with a mental illness is beyond that. You just seeing pure economics. You got an economic lens examining every client that would come to you. Can be correct. And then we wonder what is happening. What is happening? Sometimes people don't even know. Some psychiatrists don't even know that persons would have suggested that they stop taking the medication. I have spoken to two psychiatrists, and they told me that these individuals would have taken or suggest that patients of theirs were asked to stop taking the medication and take the supplements. Right? Nothing wrong with suggesting that people take supplements. Nothing wrong with that. But usually, a good expert in the area of psychiatry would, in addition to the medication, to try to correct the ill, would suggest supplements as well. Because it would help. They can work in unison. The psychiatric medication, pharmacological treatment, can work on its own. Where you don't expect somebody to be taking medication and just medication alone. The person has a life and they would have to be fed, they have to be cared for from a nutrition perspective. So they're always going in unison. Now, for you to remove the pharmacological treatment of a patient and give them supplement to go along with the food that they're already eating at their home, that can't make sense. Cannot make sense. We have to stop doing persons this. We have to stop. Some of us is all about making money and we don't care about the improvement of the person. And certain things, if you catch them early, you could put closure to them or get them under control for a very, very long period of time. There was a particular individual who was on the psychiatric ward being cared for, actually ran away from the hospital and reached by me. And I understood basically what was going on with him. And I offered some guidance, took him to the park, watched some football. Some people had quite a lot to say about that. But those who sort of understand the massaging effect of somebody who would have run away, I can't run him from by me. Where would he go? He would get knocked out because people say he had this and he had that. He would have got knocked out. So I got to the root of the problem. And when I understood what happened, I went for the individual that was the root cause of his situation. Brought them back together, even provided accommodation at my home for the gentleman. And he came around nicely. I really thought that he was a national treasure. And he proved himself to be a national treasure because he would have gone on to do his first degree, master's degree, and he now holds a doctorate in pharmacology. You don't have much of those things around. You might have a doctor who might prescribe medication, But I'm talking about somebody who in the field of making and putting these things together. Pharmacologist. Look at that. Somebody who other persons might have given up on. Look at the outcome. Sometimes it's just for you to get to the root of the problem. A lot of persons, a lot of us, we have stress for many reasons. Could be because of a relationship, could be because we're not eating enough, because sufficient money is not there to buy and feed us balanced diets and high quality food. And it could be something that you might have witnessed or something that you might have taken part in. Something that you might have taken part, you might have committed murder. And every so often, you see come back to haunt you. Come back to haunt you, even if you're watching the television and you see somebody being killed or even being in a discussion where the killing of somebody is the nucleus of the conversation. That is sufficient as stressor. That's a trigger and could cause you to behave in a once again abnormal way. We have to be mindful. You call that post-traumatic stress disorder, where events of the past haunting you. Something you don't even have to be directly involved in the action. Just knowing about it. COVID stressed out a lot of people. COVID caused a lot of people to be depressed, to suffer from stress, anxiety, and depression. So how do we deal with that? It's not every mental situation would call for medication. It's not every mental situation would call for that. But you have to establish eating food and supplements that, well, that would always happen because you have to feed the individual. You have to feed that individual. But sometimes if the person far gone, you might have to use a medication to stabilize them, provide them with some protracted period of equilibrium. And while they're going through that, you offer them some psychotherapy. Because persons who would have been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, you have something called cognitive processing therapy or cognitive behavior therapy. Let's look at the cognitive processing therapy. The persons are entertaining some very negative and unpleasant thoughts. So the cognitive processing therapy would have those unpleasant thoughts substituted by more favorable and pleasant ones. You might have to organize a 12-session period with a talk therapist or a psychologist, and you go through. Sometimes the prescribed sessions will just be 12 or 16, and you make your progress. You'll be warned about avoiding triggers and everything else. I think that I did an assignment at the prison. I think at that time I was doing my forensic psychology. I would have brought it to the station here twice already and let persons see and hear the discussion and the questions asked. We have to be mindful that triggers will have to be avoided until that person is strong enough to be exposed to these triggers. and not be impacted adversely. Sometimes you can't run away from stuff that would impact you. Sometimes the best course of action is to subject you, but you don't bully the people into that situation. You massage them. You expose them little by little by little by little. And incrementally, they would go through the improvement. Sometimes the talk therapy might not be strong enough, might not be as effective as you would like it to be, and the person would need to couple psychotherapy with pharmacological therapy. That is talk therapy and medication. And of course, they have some tried, tested, and proven to be okay for certain mental illnesses that you can use natural treatment. But nobody can tell you go take up the bush and take it. Cannot be like that. What is the dosage? You see, and this is the problem that we have. What is the dosage? Even though this particular bush, and I heard somebody on a radio station recently, and I was trying to get in because the gentleman was suggesting, this is another one of those persons, was suggesting that they look at a wide spectrum, miss one, catch the other. So something might not be specific, something might not be specific to mental illness X, let us call it X. But inside of that spectrum, you might have X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So once you give that, it will capture X because X is a part of X, Y, Z, A, B, C. That is a very broad spectrum. And yet it is difficult to say what the dosage is because you don't know the concentration of the active ingredient, and the active ingredient might not be specifically targeting X, but somewhere along the line, it's like medical debris. You benefit from that. You benefit from that because it is part of the overall treatment. That is the problem when you're dealing with natural treatment. If you want to be genuinely involved in using natural processes and natural substances, you got to find a way to have them agro-processed so you could have an idea of the dosage. And that is the advantage that the way, the conventional way, would have over that. Because when you go to the drugstore, the pharmacy, and you're looking for, say, ibuprofen, you could get ibuprofen, it could be 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, 150 milligrams, 200 milligrams. So even, we're not saying that there isn't a little guesswork in it at times, even from the experts them. But if you give somebody 5 milligrams, 4 times a day, 50 milligrams 4 times a day, and it did not work. You did not see, you did not monitor, observe. From a clinical perspective, you did not see the improvement that you anticipated. But you had to start somewhere. Then you might suggest, okay then, 100 milligrams 4 times a day. So 50 times 4, that's 200. But 100 times 4 is now 400. And you realize that was perfectly ideal. Then you have directions to follow now. Yes, this year worked very well. Maybe it's the state, the mental state that the person is in. And then you start to monitor him, that you're telling them 100 milligrams 4 times a day. And the 50 milligrams 4 times a day did not work. When you're using the 100 milligrams 4 times a day, and you realize over a period of time, and you realize the big improvement, you can now reduce that dosage to maybe 50 milligrams 4 times a day. You might even go down to 50 milligrams twice a day. But you have to be monitored, you have to be micromanaged, you have to be observed to know what changes can be made without losing the effect that you intend to accomplish. But that can't happen overnight, that can't happen in 2 weeks' time. Things like that sometimes would take a good 6 months, 8 months, a whole year. But of course, we are aware that there are side effects with medication. Side effect with medication. But you have to weigh the benefits. You have to weigh the benefits. Because sometimes even the particular medication might induce some side effects. Once the pharmacologists them are aware of this, they can give you another medication to minimize that. So sometimes persons would have mental issues. You might see them taking about 4 different medications. Each medication rather, has a specific function. You might take a medication that may make your tongue heavy, make you step like in slow motion. But when you take the next medication to negate or mitigate that side effect, then you're just as smooth as jello to flow. But we must admit that sometimes persons who are mentally sick, they do not get the full dose of medication that they're supposed to get. Sometimes some is not around. Sometimes some an order, you have to wait. And in the interim, out of the 4, they might get 2, they might get 3. Some persons, family members, go as far as bringing in the medication from Barbados and other places. But of course, when the medication comes, you have your discussion with your psychiatrist and be guided accordingly. Another issue we have is some persons who are not psychiatrists, under no guidance from a psychiatrist, changing a person's medication. That can't be right. Any doctor who are not specialized in psychiatric care ought not to use the initiative and prescribe any medication or change up any medication without the guidance of a qualified psychiatrist. On your own, you ought not to do it. That is unethical. It is not right. If you're under the guidance, a psychiatrist might be overseas, but then you report to her your observations and what's going on, and they can help you do a diagnosis. Or even if the person was on treatment already, they could tell you, they could suggest to you, based on what you would have related to them, you must change up the medication. Some people might be allergic to medication A, but then you have a parallel medication, maybe common A. And since they're allergic to capital A, you could change the medication and give them common A. Or you could change it from A to B. Because the active ingredient, whatever functional group that ingredient has, it is also present in medication B. So at the nucleus of the active ingredient, you have the same thing. But it's whatever supplemental substances or compounds you are adding to that particular medication. That might be what they are allergic to. Sometimes I listen to persons who I associate with. Said they were drinking beer and the beer gave them a headache. The reality is that beer is basically ethanol, processed ethanol. While processing ethanol, you have some byproducts that are formed. You have some byproducts that are formed. And sometimes it is not the ethanol itself is responsible for the headache that you are experiencing, but rather one or two of the byproducts that would have been generated during the process of making the ethanol. Yeah, we have to be mindful. Yeah, that's where your headache coming from. So sometimes we need to ask questions. Ask questions. And some people like to mix all kind of stuff to give people. If you are not a psychiatrist, you ought not to be prescribing any medication. However, if it is a matter of urgency and no psychiatrist is around, somebody who would have understudied or work along with a psychiatrist maybe could give it her best shot or his best shot. Because people can learn by osmosis. If I'm a psychiatrist and you've been working with me 5 years, 7 years, inside of the clinical environment, you observe and you realize what was prescribed, what adjustments were made. Someday, if you cannot get in touch with me, you can give it your best shot and prescribe and change what you have to change. But it cannot be on a regular basis. Because if I cannot be found for a protracted period of time, then some other psychiatrist would have to come and substitute for me for the duration of time. You cannot leave it up to the non-qualified person. Despite having learned by osmosis, being around, observing, it is not ethically correct. It is not. So those are things that we have to be mindful of. Just assist persons with their mental health situation. Families who feel like it is a dishonor to have somebody with a mental illness under your roof, you got to be more sensitive than that, more tolerant than that. Because sometimes it is your own embracing of that individual that would help them to go through improvement. Your own embracing. Family therapy is one of the most effective. Family therapy could take you away from pharmacological therapy. And you'll be surprised to know that it is effective. When families discard a member of the family as biological debris, come on, a person might be mentally sick, but they're not stupid. They could observe the resistance and the treatment being offered to them. And that itself could complicate matters. That itself could complicate matters. So sometimes when you have things going smoothly, and then you have disruptive family activities, diluted involvement of the family, that can be another verse and chapter in the life of that individual. And it is not an embarrassment. It is not an embarrassment. A person who would have witnessed something, a trauma, was traumatic in them, have them traumatized every time the trigger is around. We got to empathize with that person. We have to help them get over that. That is not something they're born with. That is not a defect. Like some psychopath whose part of the brain responsible for empathy is underdeveloped. Somebody suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder didn't born that way. And that is why they always have this debate, nature versus nurture. That's another issue for another time. But we have to be more accommodating. We have to understand that no medication is perfect. Somebody might take a medication and might not suffer the side effect like a family member of yours. Every little thing would have side effect. And that is why dosages got to be crafted in such a way to help to negate as much as possible the potential side effect from becoming kinetic. We have to be intimate. To me, you see, a healthcare provider, especially of persons with abnormality of the mind, that connection, that relationship, supposed to be very, very, very close. Very close. There was someone at the psyche ward and apparently was a little bit out of control. And they called officers to help to get her under control. Maybe they might have hit her. And that is in her mind, embedded deeply in her mind. Because one time, apparently, her boyfriend was driving and the renewal of license, the stamp, the sticker, was not the appropriate one. And police flagged them. And she went into a panic attack right away. Not that she was concerned with the fact that the vehicle might not have been licensed, no fault of hers, but the very presence of the police officers put her in a rage, a panic attack, because of something that she experienced before. So experiences could have an adverse mental impact on you for quite a while if you don't seek the therapy. Many relationships went sour over the COVID period. Many persons were economically ruined and could not supply the needs for themselves and their families. And even though some may have recovered to an extent where they are now doing it, just memories about those period of times when they couldn't do it could haunt them. You might have recovered from an economic perspective, but what about when the guilt starts to come back on you and say for a period of time during COVID, my family members, my dependents, could not eat even 3 square meals. I'm not going to put it up by 4. Some people eat once a day, twice a day. Some persons might have gotten sick from the fact that they didn't want to waste any food at all. So they refrigerate the food. And some persons are of the misconception that once you put food in the refrigerator, it would not spoil. That is not true. Even if you put it in the freezer, if you do not put it in the freezer, then the few bacteria will get a chance to multiply. And bacteria multiply exponentially. So when they start to multiply, they multiply. So some people avoid that and put the food in the freezer. Now, if you cook just sufficient food to eat, there'll be no need to put the food in the normal part of the refrigerator or in the freezing compartment. You'll eat everything. But when you cook more, some people cook for 2 days, some cook for 3 days, some cook for an entire week. And that there could be dangerous. All because it's about economics. If I cook 3/5 of a pot of rice and lentils and chicken wing, whatever, what's the difference between 3/5 of that and 3/4? 3/4, of course, is more than 3/5 because 3/5 is about 60%, 3/4 is about 75%. So you walk out, well, let me cook the 3/4 instead of the mere 3/5. So you're left with food to put up because you could only eat a fraction of it daily basis. So you're going into your 4th day. But look at it. After the 1st day, you have to take out the food out of the refrigerator. You have to take out some of what you want. You might have to thaw it down. Take out some of what you want, sufficient portion for you, and then you put back. But what would have happened now because of the refrigeration in the deep freeze or the freezer compartment, the ice that would form on that food would provide liquid water for the food environment mixing with the food. Water is an essential ingredient for bacteria to thrive. So every time you take out the food and you thaw it down, you're creating a fertile environment for bacteria to multiply. So the food becomes worse and worse. Or let me say, less preserved and less preserved and less preserved on a daily basis. So we have to be careful. And if you're into science and you maybe, okay, you're going to be aware of it now because I said some of you might just become aware of it. Even saying it now and looking back at COVID time, when you try to husband your resources, so you cook for an entire week. Looking back at it and maybe hearing what I just said, you might say me, I was subjecting my family and my children to this. So the bacteria, you don't know what went down inside of them. Maybe when Susan was crying for her belly and was bloating and everything else, maybe could have been bacterial development inside of her giving off the hydrogen sulfide, causing the gas to be produced and the stomach to bloat and all that sort of stuff. You might now be feeling guilty that you might have induced that physiological condition on your family members, even though it's already gone and you have already recovered economically to provide 4, maybe 4.5 square meals. The mind is very powerful, and that itself could make you feel. Nothing could disrupt your mind more so than when you fail to provide amply for persons who are depending on you. Nothing could take you on a guilt trip more so than failing to provide amply for your dependents. So during COVID, a lot of that happened. People became stressed, and then the stress turned into anxiety. The anxiety might have been transformed to depression, then maybe later into a major depression. Some people have not recovered. You might see them from a physical perspective, but above their shoulders, there are things that are impacting them still. Impacting them. Some persons try to save a certain percentage of their earnings. And if you're out of work for a year, year and a half, and you're not able to generate any income, but instead gone to your reserve to remove monies to assist you in your survival, two things could happen. You would look at it and say that your reserve would have been depleted to a certain degree. And you look at it the next way and say, had that reserve not been touched at that particular juncture, and the generation of income came in regularly, like before, prior to COVID, during that COVID period, you could have gotten a reasonable amount saved. All those that spin around in people's head. I usually would tell those inmates and other students that a man is a mind with a body and not a body with a mind. A man, a human being, is a mind with a body and not a body with a mind. In other words, the emphasis is above the shoulder. The emphasis is above the shoulder. So a lot of things could be going on. You could have a strong body. Strong body, looking great. But if that mind is not functioning well, if that mind is not functioning well, it can create problems. Because the mind is in control. And if your mind is not functioning well, there will be a disruption. That relationship, the best relationship you could have is at 18 inches between your brain and your heart. Those several inches you got between your brain and your heart, that is the best relationship an individual could ever have. Because if you had control in your head, problematic. If your mind going and your body can't keep up, that's another issue. Especially you have persons who might have got through atrophy at the muscles, lose muscle mass, even some bone mass. When you reach a certain age, you start to lose masses from bone and muscles. I think I read an article when Arnold Schwarzenegger went in the mirror and he looked in, and the amount of indecent language, he couldn't believe that that was him. You know, this guy would have won every championship there was in bodybuilding. When he saw himself in the mirror, he said, what is that? People that need therapy for that. How many persons are bodybuilders are trying to look buff, and during the COVID, they could have neither afforded the supplement or the nutrition to keep up their muscle mass, and their strength, their bone density might have decreased. All these sort of things that impacted people, they linger around in their minds, and impact their lives and the relationship with their family. Let us take a break and come back. Let me see the phone, please. Thank you. Let me email address, please. I want to send you something if I want it.
903.news@gmail.com.
I sent it. Tell me to get it if I want to use it when I use it.
I received it.
See it?
I received it.
Okay, I'll just give a little. When we come back, I'll just.
No?
Yeah.
I turn it down, no?
Yeah. No, don't play it now. I'm going to say something first.
Playing it now.
Welcome back to Fear in Our Favor. Now, I think I would have said quite a mouthful with respect to assisting persons with mental health issues and making sure that you take them to a state of comforting equilibrium. Walk along with them. Don't let them become frustrated. Just walk along with them, please. You have to have that finesse to massage your methodology and get it into the family members and get them to accept it. Because if they don't accept it, it will become an antagonistic environment. You have to provide a service that they're willing to embrace. If they are not, it's going to be quarrel back and forth, side effect, this, that, not making any progress, and you will not be given the well-needed period of time in which to work with your patient or the individual. Okay, I listened to a song today, and I asked an individual to send me that song. because I want to play it and then explicate it, try to explain it. But the principle behind it is what I do not agree with. And that is what I would want to be looking at for sometimes. I would ask the engineer to play that song now. I want you to listen to it very, very carefully. It is basically saying that people being complaining about the skimpiness of our carnival revelers, and if if you're going to complain about it every year and you don't want your children to be exposed to that, your family to exposed to that, stay home. Well, that is what I have a problem with, because I think that the skimpiness of our carnival revelers, especially females, would have crossed that line. Would have crossed that line. The only thing left for them to do is appear naked with paintings, and then after that is just to appear naked. Play the song for me, please, and let the listening audience zero in.
10 seconds.
How much?
5 seconds.
Yeah, welcome back. That was quite a mouthful. Instructive. Stay in your house. The Calypsonian indicated that after every carnival, people complaining about the lewdness, the vulgarity, and if you don't want to see it, you should stay home. He also indicated that the younger people would have indicated that carnival has evolved, so decency has now turned into nastiness, put it that way. That is the evolution that they would like us to accept. They want to hijack the carnival. When there was no carnival in 1983, Elimat sang a song about talking about no carnival in 83. And he outlined the impact that carnival had on people. Nice song, nice, a lovely song. And it was rather touching for you to know the expectations of people around carnival time. We have two extremes on the spectrum of carnival onlookers. You have the future in the very young people who are not old enough to decide that the lyrical content of a particular song is not conducive for the future development. All they're hearing is a good melodious tempo and they move to it. And sometimes I feel it for these young people, the young children, because they're just dancing. We, some of the band members and songwriters, and sometimes people who are in charge of children's parade, the type of songs they have the children dancing to. It is not safe for us to be doing that because sometime in the future, when they become more sensible and they start to dissect those songs, have them explicated, and realize that, come on, this is what I was dancing to. You know, so it could traumatize the children later on. You have what you call withheld traumatization. You reach a stage where you could better understand. Better understand. It's like some math students who do matrices. They feel that there's no relevance of matrices to real life. And when you give them a problem with various clubs playing and how many points for a win, a draw, and a loss, and you build up your matrices and then you multiply out and you see, well, who were the winners or who lead in the table, they get a practical application of the importance of matrices, row times, column, and you do your multiplication and you go on and you understand. So you massage them into it. These little children someday would fight inside of themselves to realize that they were dancing to songs with that kind of lyrical content. I'm not talking about that song in particular. I'm talking about songs that are not appropriate for children, but because they can't understand and just go into the melodious structure, then we see it as okay, total disrespect for our young children. Now we have on the other end of the spectrum, we have the elderly people. These people would have laid the foundation for us. They would have passed on many knowledge and information. They cared for the family. They were the nucleus of family stability. Never mind that you have grandmothers in their 30s right now, or maybe even in the late 20s, and that is becoming a problem for us. We cannot overlook the pivotal role that grandparents or the elderly played in keeping the fabric of our society together. We cannot overlook that. And to repair them by bringing out all that nudity and things onto the street at carnival, at their displeasures, and then to put salt in the cut and ask them to stay home. If you don't like what you see, stay home. I think that is a very awkward statement. I could appreciate a calypso. I wrote calypsos, I write calypsos still, I judge, I adjudicated calypsos. And I always appreciate the effort that a calypsonian or somebody would have to put into a song. The arrangement, the writing, the structuring, the rhyming if necessary. Everything about a calypso I could appreciate. But I'm extracting the message to tell persons who do not agree with the overexposure of human beings within the nudity context. If they don't want to see it, stay home. But you had 12 months, 11 months, hardship, working, and it's time for you to put down your hair and do what you have to do. So the elderly, who usually would line Greenland's pasture, Keon Street, go right across, even the square sometimes, you're saying to them, your time is over. We have absolutely no consideration to give to your taste. Carnival would have evolved. Yeah, Carnival evolved and would have long gone past your taste. That is very, very unfortunate. That is utterly disrespectful to the elderly who would have laid a foundation on which we would have built. You don't want your children to see that? Stay home with your children. So your children them go to school and they get a chance to enjoy themselves. But you must traumatize the children by not allowing them to go because you don't want them to see. Your instruction is for them to stay home with their granny. So if you're going to destroy the middle, the two ends of our society, what would be left? Wisdom would be gone. Absolutely no consideration for the elderly. Wisdom would be diluted into insignificance. Wisdom comes with age. If you want to be somebody of sagacity, you have to socialize yourself or acquaint yourself with people of wisdom. So we take them and we throw them away. We take the future and we destroy them because we're only concerned with the wavelength that is in between the young children and the elderly. So whatever these people between here are desirous of, we satisfy them. We give them the utility of form and content that they want. We provide them with that. Total disregard, totally stoic, indifferent. What is there to achieve after such act. The scare the young children, the scare the, what is there to achieve? We got to come better than that as a nation. Carnival Committee got to come better than that. I don't know if it is business for some of them, connections. You go on social media and people crying for the same skimpy, the price, the cost of those same skimpy outfits. So they're traumatized two ways: financial capabilities of funding the costume, and then thereafter they have to either take in the rum, the smoke, or whatever, because they don't know how they would be accepted. So they're saying to themselves, once I drunk and high and smoke, it doesn't matter what people saying, I cannot process it, so it would not impact me. We can't do that. And the reality is that a lot of revelers got to drink up the rum and do what they got to do in order to get the audacity, the braveness to parade in those skimpy outfits. Some of them don't have a clue what they're doing sometimes, how drunk they are. You have persons who would have seen themselves. You have people on the road taking their videos with their phone. Phone are very, very common, popular. And when people post them on social media, for them to see the conduct that they subjected themselves to, they can't believe. Some of them looking at it, looking at the video, and they're saying not them, that ain't me. Maybe the twin sister. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. People got different tastes, and I understand the message. It would have completely, I don't believe anybody is indifferent about this. It would have completely polarized our carnival public. Either that you love the skimpiness and the lowness, or you don't like it at all. Nobody in between. People not sitting on any fence when it comes to this. And I'm surprised that the people from the Christian denominations, they're not coming out and talking more against that. You see, because sometimes we politicize stuff. If my government is in power and we're having a successful carnival with the size of the troops and the number of troops, then I will feel happy because that happened under my government. The biggest carnival ever. People who are supposed to be offering religious guidance, they couldn't care about that. They just want to know, as much as they say they're into religion, they too have been polarized to being affiliated with one major party or the other. That's a fact. And once you're affiliated with the administration that is in power throughout the years, you wear wooden glasses during the carnival time. For anything to build a crowd, they're kind of chumpish. They're very sensitive about the size of crowds, which would suggest that their administration would have a successful. Every time there's something is under this administration and that, no, we just want people. Every time we try to categorize the success of something from a political perspective, somehow we take away from it. Leave it. Just say that the people of the country really did enjoy themselves. Not the biggest ever, biggest this and biggest that. because that would cause the people them from the religious perspective to lend blind eyes to those skimpy stuff that we see on the street. I wonder if the laws that we have on our books with respect to indecent exposure could not be activated during the carnival season. We got laws about indecent exposure. So when we go to the next level, and the females them don't have on anything, but they have a painting. So you're saying that once you could paint the vulgarity or the skimpiness, you're not breaking any law with indecent exposure. That can't be right. I think it is time that the authorities look at our behavior and conduct during carnival and see what could be applied to mitigate the entire situation. We cannot want make money so much that we don't care what happens after that. Carnival is not really supposed to be a business of sort. But people say it has evolved and they're now describing carnival as a business. So the cultural expressions, I don't know which part of our culture comfortably asks females to go on the road with 99.9% exposure. Which part? But if that is the case, we are looking for some new tourism product. Maybe we could get a pasture and have persons expose themselves to that degree and carry the tourists them to look at them, because that is part of our cultural expression, so to speak. Maybe that should be part of it. Shouldn't just be carnival alone that those things are done. Get a few pastures throughout. Kingsley's pasture, St. Paul's pasture, Sandy Point Park, Keon. We have a lot of play field and they could just drive around and see. And maybe we could get some music playing and they skin out as much as they would like and feel the tourists them would appreciate. That could be a new touristic product. If we don't see anything wrong with it, they take it to the highest level. They generate some revenue for the country. Put them on a pasture, play the music. We wouldn't do that because we'll be troubled by the adverse publicity. Because the tourists are going to take the videos and they're going to post them all over. Yes, we do have some tourists here at carnival time. But if charity begins at home, and if you cannot respect the elderly who would really want to consume some of the activities and functions at carnival time, but instead you ask them to stay home, we're very cold-hearted. Very, very cold-hearted. We are disrespectful to the elders, and we are carefree, careless. In legal terms, they say you have a duty of care. We have a duty of care to nurture the future generation. So many challenges around the world right now. We need creative minds to help us in technology. Look at the drone display at the Independence Parade. Creativity, creative minds. And you want to tell me that at carnival time, the most creative we can be is to ask the females to expose themselves 99.9%. Wow. I guess creativity has evolved. It doesn't make sense and it has crossed the line. The gentleman put a good song together because in reality, that vulgar dressing, skimpy dressing, would have entirely polarized our carnival public. You know, the funny thing about it, because some of them would have to take in the liquor, the rum, in order to parade the streets in those conditions. Sometimes people end up places they're not supposed to go. Sometimes they end up in places they're not supposed to go. But everybody has a choice. Everyone has a choice. I think that we can cut back on it. We used to be doing just fine without the skimpiness. So why do we want it now to that extent? And the funny thing about it, you know, a lot of relationships are formed during carnival time. People meet people, returning national, foreigners, even locals, they get a chance to hang out and they become acquainted, associate themselves, and they could build something thereafter. But a consideration must be given that when a male meets a female under those conditions and he is successful in achieving his purpose, after all that is said and done, and you're looking for some longevity to the friendship or the relationship, it will not happen. Most males, when they pick you up out of that environment, they remember where they picked you up from. They may keep you around for the short term, but you wouldn't even make it, you wouldn't even transition to the medium term. How would they feel taking home somebody to their family? Knowing that if this person usually would expose themselves like that, it's just a matter of time. They might not want to stop doing it. You might not want to stop doing it. And it might not be at your pleasure. So as a result of that, you want to start trying to make your changes. You can hang around. The utility is fresh. And then you start to get your diminishing returns. And the diminishing returns will come in quickly. They have not left anything for the imagination, that's number one. And after you would have achieved your purpose, there's nowhere else to go. I don't know, other people might feel a way about it. I think that Jamster and Azad and those guys, they look forward to. Well, even here you have Yobal and Ranking, and you see what they have to offer with respect to that discussion. Mind you, you have some males who really like to see females just like that. But you still have a fraction that cannot appreciate it. Maybe they cannot appreciate it for different reasons, or they might appreciate it for their personal reasons. But then when they consider the children, because even though we feel like children would only come out for the children's parade there, remember a lot of adults don't have anybody to leave the children home with, so they walk with the children, whether it's children parade or adults parade. So the children get a chance to witness. I know a young lady who moved out from her mother's home after seeing her mother perform on Carnival Day. She said it was eating her out on the inside, it was killing her, and she preferred not to be seeing her mother's face on a regular basis. The child was traumatized. And I'm saying that our Carnival Committee can be so selfish and absolutely don't care or being reckless with respect to their consideration, that they want to harness something of such content. If that is the case, be going down a very slippery slope. Very, very slippery slope. Because Jamsa like to say that politicians are tone deaf. And I wonder what description he would put on the authorities for advancing that destination of complete nakedness. We just have to be better than this. Or maybe we have sufficient festivals, you know. You could got something you call the Skimpy and Load Festival. Wherever you want to put it, you put it. Find some extreme part of the country to put it. And no children would be allowed. Well, the elderly wouldn't be interested in that. But we cannot take our national carnival and let it run away. Nobody's supposed to hijack the true reason for our national carnival. And the parading of adults is at the nucleus of the Calypso show, the Queen show, the parade. That is at the nucleus. How dare we let people come in and hijack that? If that happens, you could imagine what would happen to our Calypso competition. People might be able to enter and sing dancehall, reggae, sport, whatever. Because once something starts to deteriorate, it can contaminate many different areas. Many, many different areas. We need to salvage what is left of our carnival. Have it preserved. And bring back the essence and the purpose of us having a carnival in December, the 12th month. We have to work on that, and we can do it. Can't just sit back and accept this. We cannot sit back and accept it. And we should not. We ought not to. So, whoever in authority, I'm making a plea to let us show the elders, the elderly, some respect, and let them achieve that measure of satisfaction that they yearn for. I listened an organization, there were representatives talking on a particular radio program, and they were asking people to bring out your grandparents or your parents, give them a nice hairdo, boom, put on the eyelash, those long eyelashes on top of them. That's consideration. You're dressing them up. Don't let them look outrageous, but bring them out for them to enjoy themselves. That was about 3 weeks to a month ago, 2 to 3 weeks to a month ago. And I listened carefully, and I said that is good consideration. Well, if you're asking persons of the populace to bring out the elderly family members, and be there for them that they can derive some utility, some satisfaction from socializing. Our biggest socializing event is Carnival. So I think that we're being rather hypocritical to have programs of such and make such announcement or make such an appeal, and then come Carnival, the major social activity in St. Kitts, you exclude them. You are being instructive to keep them at home. What you want to do at a carnival time, and then you come and be hypocrite, idiosyncratic, but bring out the elders, enjoy them, and enjoy themselves, dress them up, let them in. We come back later with that. But what happened to carnival? What happened to this particular song? Was saying keep them home, stay home, lock down home. What happened to that? And those who remain silent, I consider them to be complicit. And you cannot be complicit with the treatment of the elderly at carnival time, and you with your hypocrisy come out and ask to take out the elderly. That's oil and water. Can't mix. You can't mix, you see 2 layers. Oil is less dense than water, so it will be floating. Oil is an organic substance. Water is polar. Likes dissolve likes in chemistry. So that'll be a situation of oil and water. They are immiscible. And you, with your hypocrisy, outside a carnival, and then lock them up in the house at carnival, that is an immiscible situation. Can't mix the hypocrisy. would be a third layer, and it would take its place on all three. We just got out. Some people might be wondering what Nital is talking about with this song. So we'll go out on it. So play it for the last, and then we could go straight out after that. So enjoy what is left of your night, but I'm going to sit here and continue to listen the song for the remaining 5 minutes. Play it for me, please. Play this song again for me, please.
So. You coming back on? It's 8 seconds in.
Hmm?
You coming back on?
No.
Hello? 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 I hear. Just, yeah.
Let me call.
Yeah. I say so. Come here. Okay. Did you want with the pen drive?
I don't want Shaki messaging me. If I have any guests, I will talk to you.
Why?
I'm not dealing with anybody going to antisocial. I don't deal with a lot of gang members trying to put Sankis back where he's supposed. I can't take on nobody going by that name. I don't want it messing with me.
No problem.
So. Yes, antisocial.
Citizens near and far. Join Newrish Nital on Sugar City 90.3 for
That you refrain from any such statements.
fellow citizens near and far. Join Newrish Nital.
That you refrain from any such statements.
Yeah, what you actually got going there? So can't the people getting upset with you boy in our chance. So what is not good? Something wrong with it. We're going on with it now. But it's what now when you see, you know. I have to go after something, so put your call.